The mermaid was bound tightly to the trunk of a large tree. With trembling strength, she slowly raised her hand toward Amara. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks and dropped to the ground beneath her feet. "Please, help me," she whispered weakly. "They will kill me and my unborn child." Her voice was soft, broken, and filled with fear. Amara froze. Fear rushed through her body, making her legs weak. Every instinct in her told her to turn around and run. But something about the mermaid's eyes, so full of pain and desperation, held her in place. Amara was a poor woman from the village. She lived in a tiny mud house with cracked walls and a roof that leaked whenever it rained. Money was always scarce, and each day was a struggle to find enough food for herself and her 2 children. Her husband had died many years earlier, leaving her alone to carry the weight of survival on her shoulders. That morning, before the sun had risen, Amara ticked up her clay water pot and set out for the river. The world was quiet, wrapped in early dawn. Birds had just begun to sing, and a cool breeze brushed against her skin as she followed the narrow footpath. She preferred fetching water at this early hour. There were fewer people around, and she needed to return home quickly to prepare cassava porridge before her children woke up. At the river bank, Amara filled her pot with fresh, cold water and carefully balanced it on her head. The weight was heavy, but years of hardship had made her strong. She began her journey home, choosing the shorter bush path so she could beat the rising sun. As she walked through the thick back road, she noticed 3 hunters gathered beneath a mango tree. They were armed with guns, their hunting bags slung over their shoulders, laughing loudly among themselves. Amara greeted them softly. "Good morning." They responded, but their voices were distant and unfriendly. None of them looked at her face. They seemed more interested in their own conversation. As Amara passed by, she overheard one of the men say, "Our lives have changed today. I still can't believe we captured a pregnant mermaid near the river. This one will bring us double the reward." Another hunter laughed greedily and replied, "That's true. They say a mermaid carrying a child holds even greater power inside her." "The child inside her will make us even richer," one of the hunters said proudly. "We'll sell both of them to the powerful man in the city." Those words struck Amara like thunder. Her heart began to race as she walked away with the heavy pot balanced on her head. A pregnant mermaid, double money, sold to a rich man? Her thoughts spun wildly. She didn't fully understand what she had just heard, but fear settled deep in her chest. Is there truly a mermaid near our river? And is she really carrying a child? Would they actually sell her like an animal? Disturbed and uneasy, Amara quickened her pace. As she neared the narrow path leading to her home, she chose to slip through the small bush behind the tall trees to avoid crossing paths with the hunters again. But just as she entered the thick greenery, a faint sound reached her ears. A soft cry. "Please, help me." Amara stopped instantly. Slowly, she lowered her clay pot to the ground. Her heart pounded as she listened closely. The voice was weak, trembling, and filled with pain. Fear crept into her bones. Her legs shook, and she looked around, but no one was in sight. Gathering what little courage she had, she moved carefully toward the sound. It was coming from behind a large bamboo tree. What she saw made her blood run cold. A woman was tied tightly to the tree with thick rope. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with long, wet hair clinging to her shoulders and skin that glowed strangely in the dim light. Her belly was large and round. It was obvious she was pregnant. Then Amara's eyes dropped lower and she froze. Where the woman's legs should have been was a long, shimmering silver tail. The rope bound it tightly, leaving her completely helpless. Amara gasped, but no sound escaped her lips. Standing there, in the quiet bush, Amara realized the impossible truth. A pregnant mermaid was tied up near the village river. The mermaid slowly raised her trembling hand toward Amara. Tears slid down her cheeks and fell to the earth beneath her. "Please, save me," she whispered weakly. "They will kill me and my baby." Amara stumbled backwards in terror. Her entire body shook, and every part of her wanted to turn and run as fast as she could. She had grown up hearing stories, terrifying tales whispered at night about mermaids who stole human souls, about spirits of the water who brought destruction wherever they went. Yet, as Amara looked into the mermaid's eyes, she saw no evil, only fear, only pain, and the desperate plea of a mother trying to protect her unborn child.
That was what the village stories always said. But the being standing before Amara did not look dangerous at all. She looked terrified, broken, and desperate, like any woman pleading for her life. Amara quickly scanned the area. No one was around. With her heart racing, she took a cautious step forward. "Please," the mermaid cried again, stretching her trembling hand toward her. "They will return soon. I don't want to die." Amara swallowed hard and leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Are you truly a mermaid?" The woman nodded slowly as tears spilled down her face. "Yes," she whispered, "and I am carrying a child. They captured me when I came to the river late at night. They tied me here so they could come back for me later. Please, save me." Pity filled Amara's eyes. The mermaid was shivering uncontrollably, and dark marks covered her arms where the rope had cut into her skin. Then, suddenly, voices. Men's voices. Amara stiffened. She turned sharply and saw moving shadows near the bushes. "They're coming," the mermaid murmured, panic flashing in her eyes. Amara's thoughts crashed into each other. She didn't know what to do. Should she run? Should she leave the mermaid behind to save herself? Or should she risk everything to help her escape? The voices grew louder. "We should move her now before the villagers wake up," one of the men said, followed by rough laughter. Amara's breath became shallow. If the hunters arrived now and saw her beside the captive, they might hurt her, or worse. She looked back at the mermaid. Tears streamed down her face as she silently begged for help. Amara didn't know where the courage came from, but she stepped forward anyway. Carefully, she reached for the rope binding the mermaid's hands. The mermaid winced in pain, but lifted her eyes, hope shining through the fear. Amara tugged at the knot. It wouldn't budge. Her hands shook violently as she pulled harder, straining to loosen the tight rope. Behind her, footsteps grew closer. The sound of boots brushing leaves made her chest tighten. "Please, please," the mermaid whispered over and over. Sweat formed on her forehead. Her heart pounded like a drum in her ears as her fingers worked faster, desperate to free the knot before it was too late. The hunters' voices were now close enough to hear clearly. "We should move her now," one of the men said nearby. Amara's eyes widened in terror. The clay pot she had left on the ground was still there, plain evidence that someone else was close. If the hunters noticed it, everything would be over. She glanced at the mermaid, and the mermaid met her gaze. In that silent moment, she felt it clearly. Whatever she did next would change her life forever. Just as Amara reached for the final knot, the sound of footsteps stopped dangerously close. Panic shot through her body. Without thinking, she slipped behind the thick bamboo and pressed herself flat against the tree. Her heart thundered in her chest. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, and sweat soaked her back despite the chill of the early morning air. The mermaid struggled to control her breathing. Tears streamed down her face as she stared helplessly toward Amara, fear and pain shining in her eyes. She knew the men were close. She knew what would happen if they found her. Amara shut her eyes tightly and whispered a prayer deep in her heart. "God, please don't let them find us." The hunters moved closer. One more step and they would see everything. Then, suddenly, "Aha! An antelope," one of the men shouted loudly. The others froze. "Where? Where?" they yelled. "There," the hunter shouted, pointing his gun into the thick bushes. In an instant, the hunters turned and rushed off, lifting their weapons and shouting excitedly as they chased after the animal. Their boots crushed dry leaves as they disappeared deeper into the forest, their voices fading with distance. Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. This was it, her only chance. She burst out of her hiding place and ran back to the mermaid. Quickly, she whispered urgently, "We must leave now before they return." Her fingers flew to the rope, shaking as she worked desperately at the tight knot. The rope was thick and rough, cutting into her skin as she pulled with all her strength. Pain shot through her fingers, but she ignored it. She pulled again, and again. The knot began to loosen. Behind them, the forest fell silent once more. Too silent. Amara knew they had only moments left. Her fingers burned with pain, but Amara refused to stop. The rope scraped against her skin as she pulled again and again. The mermaid whimpered softly, tears slipping down her face, yet hope shone in her eyes. Thank you," she whispered weakly. At last, the final knot gave way.
The mermaid's
The
arms
rope
fell
dropped
limply to
ground.
her sides, and she leaned against the tree, her strength nearly gone. She could barely remain upright. Amara turned her head sharply, scanning the bush. The hunters' voices were still echoing in the distance, now closer to the river. She could hear them shouting to one another as they chased the antelope. They would return, and soon. The mermaid tried to stand, but her body gave up. She collapsed back down, her shimmering silver tail brushing through the dry leaves. "Please, help me," she murmured. Without hesitation, Amara crouched beside her and wrapped her arms around the mermaid's waist, trying to lift her. The weight surprised her. The mermaid was heavy, and Amara's strength was limited, but she pushed herself beyond her limits. She draped the mermaid's arm over her shoulder. The mermaid leaned heavily against her, her swollen belly making movement slow and difficult. Amara took one shaky step forward, then another. Her legs trembled under the burden, yet she kept going. They moved carefully, inch by inch, avoiding the brittle leaves that cracked loudly underfoot. The mermaid groaned softly with each movement, clutching her stomach as her breathing grew uneven. "Ah, ah," she cried quietly. Amara looked at her with deep compassion. She had no idea how far her small hut was from the river path, but she knew one thing: she could not abandon her now. Every few minutes, Amara was forced to stop. She lowered herself gently, allowing the mermaid to sit and rest while she wiped sweat from her face and caught her breath. Her clay water pot remained behind in the bush, forgotten. Right now, nothing mattered except getting the mermaid to safety. The sun slowly began to rise, painting the sky with soft morning light. Birds sang louder, welcoming the day. Amara's wrapper clung to her body, soaked with sweat. Her back ached fiercely, but she pushed on, refusing to stop. Beside her, the mermaid cried quietly, her face pale, both hands holding her swollen belly. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered again and again. "I don't want to die." Amara tightened her grip and kept moving forward, no matter what. "I won't abandon you," Amara said firmly. Her body ached and her legs trembled with every step, but she kept moving. Together, they slipped through narrow bush paths, carefully avoiding open spaces where villagers might pass. Amara feared that if anyone saw the mermaid, panic would spread and the hunters would be called back. They paused again beneath a mango tree. Amara gently touched the mermaid's face, brushing away sweat and tears. "Are you holding on?" she asked softly. The mermaid weakly nodded, though her tears continued to stream down her cheeks. After resting for a short while, Amara gathered what little strength she had left and lifted her once more. Step by step, rest by rest, they continued their slow journey, until at last Amara's small mud hut appeared at the edge of the village. Relief washed over her. She carefully pushed the wooden door open and peered inside. Her two children were still asleep on the mat, their breathing slow and peaceful. Amara thanked the heavens silently.
It was better this way for now. She guided the mermaid inside and gently laid her down on the floor, which was covered with an old, worn mat. The mermaid groaned softly, clutching her stomach as her silver tail rested lifeless beside her. Amara knelt beside her, worry filling her eyes. She noticed swelling along the mermaid's arms and deep red marks where the rope had bitten into her skin. "I'll get some warm water," Amara said quietly. She hurried outside, fetched water, and placed it over the small fire in her cooking area. When it warmed, she poured some into a bowl and carried it back inside. Dipping a clean cloth into the warm water, she wrung it out gently and placed it over the mermaid's injured arms and shoulders. The mermaid flinched at first, letting out a small cry, but moments later her body relaxed. A soft sigh escaped her lips. Amara continued, carefully wiping away dirt and sweat, massaging her back with slow, gentle movements. "Thank you," the mermaid whispered repeatedly, tears sliding down her face. Amara's chest tightened. Pity filled her heart, but fear followed closely behind. She had no idea what would happen next. She didn't understand why a mermaid was walking on land, pregnant, haunted, and nearly sold like property. As she walked silently, one question echoed in her mind. What kind of destiny had just entered?
Inside the hut, silence ruled, broken only by the mermaid's faint groans and the gentle crackle of firewood outside. Amara's eyes drifted to the mermaid's swollen belly. A troubling thought crossed her mind. What kind of child is growing inside her? Will it be human or something else entirely? She didn't know the answer, but one thing was certain. She could not allow this woman to die. The mermaid slowly opened her eyes and looked at Amara. "My name is Nene," she whispered weakly. Amara blinked in surprise. "Nene? That's a beautiful name," she said softly. "I'm Amara." Nene managed a faint smile, though tears still clung to her lashes. "Thank you, Amara. I will never forget what you've done for me." Amara nodded and gently held her hand. Then, footsteps. Amara's heart skipped. Her eyes shot toward the wooden door. Nene tried to lift herself, panic flashing across her face, but her body was too weak. Amara quickly placed a finger over her lips. "Quiet," she whispered urgently. They listened. The footsteps grew closer, closer, until they stopped right outside the hut. Amara turned to Nene. The pregnant mermaid lay helplessly on the mat, clutching her belly, her silver tail folded tightly beneath her. Suddenly, creak! The door swung open loudly. Amara sprang forward and shoved it shut with her body, blocking the view inside. "Who is that?" she demanded, forcing her voice to sound firm, despite her racing heart. "Why are you opening my door like this?" Standing there was Mama Jadeka, the village gossip. Everyone knew her, a woman who lived on rumors and secrets. One hand rested on her waist, the other pressed against the door as she tried to push it wider. She stretched her neck, attempting to peer into the hut. Amara spread her arms across the doorway, blocking her completely. Mama Jadika raised her eyebrows suspiciously and leaned closer. What are you hiding in there, Amara?" she asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. Amara forced a tight smile, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it could be heard. Behind her, Nene held her breath. And outside, Mama Jadeka's curious eyes searched for a secret that could destroy everything. Amara let out a small, nervous laugh. "Hide? Hide what, Mama? This early in the morning?" she asked lightly. But Mama Jadika was not convinced. She leaned to the left, then to the right, trying to peek into the hut. Each time she moved, Amara shifted with her, blocking the doorway like a shield. Mama Jadika clicked her tongue loudly. "Amara, you are acting very strange today, very strange." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you hiding something, or is there a man inside there with you?" Amara's eyes flew open in shock. "A man? In my house? Mama Jadika, what kind of talk is this at such an early hour?" But the gossip woman was far from done. She stepped closer, her face almost touching Amara's, her eyes sharp and searching like a hawk's. I only came to borrow your water pot, Mama Jadika said, folding her arms slowly. Amara's heart dropped. The pot. She suddenly remembered she had left it behind in the bush while helping Nene escape. If the hunters were searching for its owner and Mama Jadika started asking questions, everything would fall apart. Amara swallowed hard and forced a smile. Ah, Mama, I'm using the pot right now. I can't lend it out, she said gently. Mama Jadika raised her eyebrows even higher and hissed softly. You're using it. Using it for what? She asked, leaning in closer. Amara, you're hiding something. I can smell it. Fear pounded in Amara's chest. She pressed her back firmly against the door, blocking every small gap Mama Jadika tried to look through. Mama Jadika, she said, her voice growing firmer, what exactly are you looking for in my house? Mama Jadika shrugged dramatically and snapped her fingers. I only wanted to borrow a pot, she said, but since you are behaving like this, maybe you're hiding a man inside. Amara gasped. For a moment, no words came out. A man? Me? Mama Jadika, please leave my compound and stop spreading nonsense. She waved her hands, trying to chase the woman away. Mama Jadika clapped her hands together loudly and laughed, a sharp, knowing laugh. Ah, she said, slowly shaking her head. Amara, secrets never stay hidden in this village. She turned away at last, but not before casting one final suspicious glance back at the hut. Amara stood frozen in the doorway, her heart racing.
Outside,
Inside, Nene
rumors
held
had
her
already
breath.
begun to walk. Mama Jadika shook her head slowly as she turned away. Amara, she said over her shoulder, I'll come back later. Then we shall see what you are hiding in this your hut. She walked off, but not without turning her head repeatedly to look back. Amara stood frozen, watching until the woman finally disappeared beyond the compound. Only then did she shut the door quickly and lean her back against it. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling. Slowly, she turned around. Nene was staring at her from the mat, fear and confusion written all over her face, tears shining in her eyes. Amara walked over and sat beside her, gently holding her hand. Don't worry, she whispered softly. She's gone. You are safe for now. Nene nodded weakly, clutching her belly as she struggled to breathe evenly. Thank you, Amara. Thank you, she murmured. Before Amara could respond, a sharp gasp echoed inside the hut. Amara spun around. Her son, Chijioke, was standing there, his mouth wide open, eyes stretched in terror. Mama, Mama, he shouted, pointing toward Nene. What is that? Amara's heart dropped instantly. Nene tried to hide her face with her hands as tears streamed down her cheeks. Amara rushed to her son and grabbed her shoulders gently, lowering herself to his height. Chijioke, please, she begged softly. Don't shout. Calm down. But the boy was shaking. Mama, what is that thing? Why does she have a fish tail? Is she a witch? Is she going to eat us? Amara felt her own eyes burn with tears. How could she explain this to a frightened child? She's not a witch, Amara said gently. She won't hurt us. Chijioke shook his head violently, crying harder. Mama, the elders say mermaids steal people's souls. They say they are dangerous, he sobbed, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. Amara pulled him into a tight embrace. Listen to me, Chijioke, she said softly. Not every story is true. Not every mermaid is evil. This one is sick, and she's carrying a baby. Chijioke sniffed, listening. The hunters wanted to kill her and her child, Amara continued quietly. We cannot allow that. We must help her. The hut fell silent. Nene watched them, her hand resting protectively on her belly. And in that small mud house, Amara knew she had just chosen a path that could bring danger or destiny. She won't hurt you, Amara whispered into Chijioke's ear. The boy's body trembled as his gaze remained fixed on Nene, still lying on the mat, her silver tail glinting faintly in the dim morning light. Slowly, Nene lowered her hands from her face and looked at Chijioke, tears still shimmering in her eyes. I won't hurt you, she said softly. I just want to be safe.
Chijioke swallowed hard, staring into Nene's eyes. Amara held his hand tightly, feeling the fear and uncertainty in her young son. "Promise me something," she said quietly. "Promise me you won't tell anyone. If the villagers find out, they will take her away, harm her baby, and punish us too." Chijioke looked at his mother, then at the crying mermaid, then at Amara. Slowly, he nodded. "I won't tell anyone, Mama," he whispered. Amara hugged him tightly, pressing her lips to the top of his head. "Thank you, my son," she murmured. Chijioke's eyes softened as he looked at Nene. "Are you hungry?" he asked shyly. Nene managed a weak, grateful smile. "Yes, thank you," she whispered. Amara wiped her tears quickly and stood. She moved to the corner of the hut to prepare some hot pap for Nene, her hands shaking slightly. But deep inside, fear gnawed at her heart. Mama Jadika would return sooner or later, and if she discovered Nene, the whole village would soon know. Worse still, the hunters would eventually realize the mermaid was missing and begin searching every home. Amara didn't know how long she could keep Nene safe in her humble hut. Yet she knew one thing: she had to try. Deep down, she sensed this was no ordinary mermaid. Nene carried something far greater than herself, something spiritual, something tied to the destiny of Amara's family. By the time the sun climbed high into the sky, Amara had finished washing her children's clothes and sweeping the small compound. Outwardly, she tried to appear ordinary, but inside her chest, a storm of worry raged. She kept thinking of Nene hiding on her mat, of Chijioke's promise to remain silent, and of the inevitable moment when the hunters, or worse still, the villagers might come looking. And she knew that when they did, everything could change forever. They did. Hours later, 3 hunters stormed into the village, their faces grim and eyes sharp with anger. They questioned everyone they met along the roads, asking about the person who had gone to the river early that morning and left a clay pot
not
behind.
knowing anything. Even when the hunters described the pot and the exact spot where it had been found, no one could give an answer. They had no idea who had been there, and since they hadn't seen Amara that morning, they couldn't describe her either. Growing frustrated, the hunters went from house to house, pounding on doors. "Did you see anyone go to the river early this morning?" they demanded. Each time, the villagers shook their heads. No one knew anything. The hunters' anger deepened. They could feel that someone in the village was hiding something. Finally, they arrived at Amara's small mud hut. Inside, Amara was pounding cassava in her mortar when a loud, sharp knock sounded at the door. Her heart leapt into her throat. She wiped sweat from her brow with the corner of her wrapper and slowly went to open it. There they were, the 3 hunters, tired and fierce-eyed, standing just outside. "Good afternoon," Amara greeted them cautiously, forcing a polite smile. "Good afternoon," one of the hunters replied coldly. "We are looking for the woman who went to the river early this morning," the hunter said, staring directly at Amara. "She left a clay pot there." Amara's heart hammered in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. Taking a slow, steadying breath, she said, "I don't know who went to the river this morning. I've been here all day, pounding cassava." The hunters looked around the small hut, eyes scanning carefully, but they saw nothing out of place. After a tense few seconds, they shrugged and turned to leave. Amara quickly shut the door behind them and pressed her back against it, chest rising and falling rapidly. She knew she could no longer keep Nene in the hut. If the hunters returned, or if someone else noticed something unusual, they might search her home. That night, with the moon casting a silver glow over the village and stars twinkling faintly in the sky, Amara called her children close. "Chijioke, Nena," she whispered softly. Her children scrambled to her side, rubbing their sleepy eyes. "Mama is going somewhere inside," she continued, her voice low and urgent. "I want you to lock the door from inside. Do not open it for anyone until I return." "Mama, where are you going at night?" Chijioke asked nervously, his eyes wide with worry. "I will be back soon, my son. Just do as I say." Amara gently touched his cheek. The children nodded, trusting their mother. Amara turned to Nene and carefully wrapped her in a large cloth,
tying it securely around her to hide her shimmering fishtail. She opened the door quietly, glanced left and right to make sure no one was watching, and then lifted Nene onto her back like a small child. Nene was weak, but she managed to loop her arms around Amara's neck as they moved along the narrow bush paths toward the river. Every rustle of leaves, every croak of a frog, and every whisper of the wind made Amara's heart leap. She was terrified of being seen, but she pressed on, step by careful step. Finally, the river appeared before them, glowing silver under the soft light of the moon. The water shimmered like liquid starlight, calm and beautiful. Amara knelt beside the riverbank and gently set Nene down. Nene's breathing was heavy, and she held her swollen belly protectively. "Thank you, Amara," Nene whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Amara knelt beside her, brushing away a tear that had escaped her own eye. "I pray you will be safe," she murmured softly. Nene gave a faint, grateful smile. Slowly, she slid into the river. The moment the water touched her tail, it gleamed brilliantly, and her strength returned as if she had been reborn. She turned to Amara one last time. "Amara, your kindness will never be forgotten," she said gently. With a soft splash, Nene disappeared beneath the silver waters, leaving only ripples behind. Amara stood silently for a long while, staring at the quiet river, the moonlight reflecting off its surface. Her heart was heavy with emotion, yet filled with peace. 7 days later, Amara awoke in the middle of the night with a sudden urge to go outside. She tied her wrapper around her waist and stepped carefully out of her hut, trying not to wake her sleeping children. Then she froze. In front of her door, 3 golden boxes lay shining under the moonlight, glowing as though lit by an otherworldly fire. Amara's heart skipped a beat. She took a cautious step closer, her mind racing. Amara looked around quickly, but there was no one in sight. She bent down and touched the boxes. They were real, heavy, and strangely warm. Confusion filled her mind. She carried them inside her hut and carefully placed them in a corner. That night, sleep would not come. Who had left these boxes? Who did they belong to? Should I keep them? She wondered. She decided to wait, thinking that perhaps the owner would
no
come
one
to claim.
appeared. Curiosity and caution won over. One morning, Amara opened the boxes and gasped. They were filled with gold coins, coral beads, and shimmering silver pieces. Quietly, she sold some of the golden beads and with the money built a bigger, steadier house in the village. She bought new clothes for her children, and for the first time in years, they ate well every day. The villagers could not help but notice the change. Amara's skin glowed with health, her children looked strong and happy, and she no longer wore tattered clothes. Slowly, she became the wealthiest woman in the village. But she never revealed the true source of her fortune. Every night, she will sit outside under the moon, gazing in the direction of the river, smiling softly and offering prayers for Nene and her unborn child. She knew in her heart that the golden boxes were Nene's way of thanking her for saving both their lives. Amara taught her children to always help those in need, to show kindness to strangers, and to believe that good deeds are never wasted. Whenever someone asked her, "Amara, how did you become so rich?" she would simply smile and say, "Kindness always comes back." And so, the poor woman who had once lived in a tiny, leaky mud hut became the wealthiest and most respected person in the village, her fortune a reminder of compassion, courage, and the magical gratitude of a mermaid.